You're watching a film called The Uninvited from 1944. It's the story of a composer and his sister who buy a beautiful Gothic seacoast mansion for a very low price. Soon they discover why they got such a good deal. The beautiful young woman with the dark hair is Gail Russell. She was only 18 at the time she made this film. It was her first starring role after 2 brief appearances in other films. She was given high praise for her acting as a terrified young woman in this ghost story. The thing is, she might not have been acting. The 18-year-old lady was terrified to be in front of the camera. A little over a year earlier, she was a high school student who never considered acting. What she wanted was to be a commercial artist. The thing was about Gail, she was a loner who suffered from an almost crippling shyness. She was discovered while she was in high school. Betty Gale Russell was born on September 21, 1924 in Chicago, Illinois, to George and Gladys Russell. She lived with an older brother named George. In 1936, the family moved to the Los Angeles area where they lived in a small apartment. Because of money problems, they were quickly losing their financed furniture. Gail was sleeping on newspapers on the living room floor. In 1942, she was just another high school student at Santa Monica High School working on her drawing skills. But Gail's mother, Gladys, who had always wanted to be an actress herself, hoped that one day her children would fulfill her dream. Maybe her gorgeous young daughter could be the one. Her mother said in an interview in Motion Picture Magazine in September 1944,
"Ever since she was a baby, you see, Gail has been painfully shy. As a child, she never wanted to meet guests who came to our home in Chicago. Instead, she would back away from strangers until she was hidden in the shadows under the piano. She would stay there despite all of our coaxing, and it was only after she had studied the people in the room for some time that she would timidly reappear."
The story goes that, in March of 1942, William Micklejohn, a Paramount talent scout, was driving on Wilshire Boulevard where he picked up a couple of hitchhiking high school boys that were skipping school for the day. They began talking, and eventually one of the boys mentioned a beautiful girl he thought should be in movies.
And I didn't know anything about this. I was minding my own business, getting ready to graduate and looking around for a job as an artist. It seems that there are several girls named Russell at Santa Monica High School. Several days went by before I received the note in a drawing class saying for me to get in touch with Paramount. I presumed it was a gag. Things like that are always happening in high school, so I threw the note in the wastebasket. Then I got to wondering. After school, I dug into the wastebasket. I got the note and I phoned Paramount, and they did want to see me. I didn't know whether to go or not, but I went. Mother came with me, and we walked into this Mr. Micklejohn's office, and I just didn't know what to think. When I was discovered for the movies, I was sleeping on the living room floor on newspapers. I went for my first interview with paint all over my face. I'd been helping paint a room at the technical school. Paramount offered me a minimum salary, $50 a week, and Mother said, "Take it, we need the money." When I got my first paycheck, it came to exactly 5 cents. I framed it and still have it.
She was nicknamed the Hedy Lamarr of Santa Monica. In 1960, she did an interview with Lou Gerard of the National Enquirer. She said,
At 16, when I signed my contract, I was completely unprepared emotionally to be an actress, a career which calls for strong extroversion. I was just the opposite, shy to the point of introversion. I lived in my own little world. It was a pleasant, sweet world, and it was all I wanted. That's why I can recall so vividly how everything came about. That's why I can shut my eyes and see myself fishing through my purse for a dime to call Paramount Studios. I was glad I didn't have that dime. I didn't want a screen test. I wasn't interested in becoming a movie star.
She spent 6 months with an acting coach and was still overwhelmed. paralyzed with fright as the camera started to roll. She had a tough time remembering her lines. They rushed her into a film called Henry Aldridge Gets Glamour starring Jimmy Lydon. It was a small part. Right away, her shyness began to show. Jimmy Lydon remembered Gail years later. He said, "As we started to rehearse before we started to shoot, she couldn't get through a full rehearsal. Finally, after 3 or 4 attempts, she began to cry. Just broke down and cried and cried."
And that wall of eyes behind the camera is what gets me.
Reported Miss Gail Russell.
Hundreds of eyes gleaming in the dark, staring at me, boring holes in me, giving me the heebies.
Then the cameras roll up for a close-up and the lens works like a mirror and there's one of her own eyes blinking at her.
Horrible,
said Miss Russell.
I worry. In 1 month, I've lost 6 pounds worrying.
After another small part in the film Lady in the Dark, she was given a chance for a starring role in The Uninvited.
Jumps from class into stardom. Gail Russell, for whom Paramount executives predict stardom after the release of her 3rd motion picture, The Uninvited, made no effort to get into movies. She was picked right out of Santa Monica High School and had intended to be a commercial artist.
The Uninvited, Dorothy McCardle's gripping novel of the supernatural, comes to the screen, starring Ray Milland, Ruth Hussey, Donald Crisp, with Cornelia Otis Skinner, and introducing the exciting beauty of Gail Russell, whose first love is shadowed by the specters of the past.
Please get out of this house now.
Now lie there quietly. I'm not afraid of anything here.
Then be afraid. Be afraid for heaven's sake.
Director Lewis Allen said of Russell's performance, "That was a performance that was manufactured. She could only do about 5 or 6 lines, and then she'd burst into tears. Well, Ray Milland and I coaxed her along, and we made the picture in bits and pieces. We'd do a half a page, then another half, and so on. So we manufactured a performance."
Gail said she was paralyzed with fright. She couldn't even remember her lines, let alone try to act with the crew staring at her. So they put up screens besides the camera. Director Lewis babied her.
According to Lewis Allen, Ray really helped Gail. Between takes, he'd take her aside and rehearse her and rehearse her and rehearse her. He was excellent with her. Thanks to Ray Milland, Gail Russell became a star.
Glamour statistics. Gail Russell, who became a star on one part, the feminine lead in The Uninvited, has a nearly perfect photogenic face, blue eyes, and nearly black hair. She is 5 feet, 4.5 inches tall, weighs 111 pounds, and had identical hip and bust measurements of 34.5 inches.
The Uninvited was one of the highest grossing films of the year, and that led to other starring roles for the young actress.
I'm Miss Brooks. I'm in charge. But if you don't mind, this isn't a joint.
A good-looking babe like you to teach you?
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Brooks. I'll see that he's here in the morning.
Oh, don't misunderstand. I didn't say he could come back. But what I will do is think the matter over and give you my answer in a few days.
See?
Perhaps you don't remember. The agency in Boston sent me here as a governess. Well, aren't you even going to look at me?
Sure.
For so many young women, that was the dream, to be discovered and quickly made into a star. And Gail was a star.
I used to cry all night before I had to show up at the studio. But I had a mother who thought the most wonderful thing in the world was to be a star. I pretended to think that too because I didn't want to disappoint her.
Yvonne DiCarlo wrote in her autobiography,
"Another contractee was the shy and sensitive Gail Russell. I felt I had so much in common with her, but she was so much more vulnerable than I. She confided in hushed tones how she wished her mother, Gladys, had never dragged her to Paramount for her screen test. She despised acting and everything it entailed, especially being put on display before executives and film crews."
What many didn't know at the time was that Gail found a way to deal with her insecurities. It happened when she was doing publicity at Lucy's restaurant while shooting Our Hearts Were Young and Gay. Somebody handed her a martini.
A wonderful thing happened shortly after I finished that martini. I felt relaxed, completely. For the first time since I signed my contract with Paramount Pictures the year before, I wasn't tongue-tied. I remember saying to myself, where's this been all my life? This is for me. But from then on, no one had to offer me a drink. By the time I'd made half a dozen pictures, I knew how to throttle my nerves and relax. So what if it was bottled courage? People took medicine for various ailments. This was medicine. I didn't have any particular cravings for liquor. Well, that's what I thought. What I didn't know was that I was already in the vise, held so tightly that I couldn't possibly break out.
Hollywood. In her youthful enthusiasm, Gail Russell pounded so hard upon a door in a scene for the Paramount Picture Fear that she broke 2 blood vessels in her right hand, fractured a little finger, and tore a ligament in her wrist. They'll have to rearrange the schedule.
But as far as the world knew, Gail was just a happy young lady who was discovered and all was well and fine. The Hollywood fairy tale continued when, in late 1945, she met another young up-and-coming actor, the handsome Guy Madison. The following year, in 1946, she was loaned to Republic Pictures to star next to cowboy hero John Wayne in the film Angel and the Bad Man. Gail and Wayne would become good friends. But just how good of friends did they become? We'll get to that in just a minute.
Gorgeous Gail Russell, back from location with few bruises. Gorgeous Gail Russell came back to town today from a 6 weeks location trip into the desert with a few actors and 400 head of cattle. She can't sit down yet on account of that buckboard, and she's still scrubbing sand out of her complexion. She's got bruises that don't show and a dirty face that does. She's also a little breathless. Because Miss Russell got introduced to horse operas the hard way, she's the co-star opposite John Wayne in Republic's The Angel and the Outlaw, and it's her first cowboy movie.
Would you call my father, please?
Yes, ma'am. Margaret, you're a nuisance. Let's call it off, Margaret. Yeah, I got places to go and country to put behind. What are you looking at?
The.
For the next few years, everything seemed to be going great for Gail. 7 years earlier, she was just another high school student. Now she was a top Hollywood actress dating an attractive young actor.
Guy Madison and Gail Russell are so lovey-dovey as they were in the days when they were madly in love. A few nights ago, they sat and held hands and seemed happier than they have been in a long time.
Lad, matching fists with murderous thuggies. Matching wits with 2 gorgeous girls. Gail Russell as a sultry American fortune hunter.
After all those speeches I made,
She wouldn't trust me.
this guy have to trust a girl to fall for him?
I was just wondering.
What?
I was wondering who could have hated Jerry enough to kill him.
Gilly. Get me out of here.
They're looking for Dr. Peabody.
A man who holds so strange a power over this beautiful girl that he can even predict her death.
How soon is it going to be?
Within a few days. At night. Under the stars.
On July 31st, 1949, Gail and Guy finally tied the knot. But soon, problems with her acting career began to show. In 1949, she was working on the film The Great Dan Patch, but the film was delayed due to an illness. In August, she was lent out to Columbia Pictures to star in a film called Mother for May. Gail was to be William Holden's leading lady, but apparently, she walked off the set of the film.
Hollywood. Latest star to be spanked with suspension is Gail Russell, who was dropped from Paramount's payroll for refusing to play a loan-out role in Columbia's Mother for Day. The picture was to have started last week, but was postponed until Harry Cohen found a replacement in Colleen Gray, another loan-out, but from 20th. Since Gail's wardrobe for the picture had already been made, the actress, to step into her shoes, had to also step into her clothes.
The Greeks and others have a word for why she didn't appear on the schedule, but it was 2-2 something or other when Gail, unhappy about the costumes she had fitted just the day before, tore them off and tore the gowns in the process in a mad rush to get out of them.
The suspension didn't last long. She began making a film called Outrage with MacDonald Carey. The film would be released in 1950 as The Lawless.
She'll have to have light knee boots in the front. I'm afraid you're stuck for a special bike, mister. She goes awful wide. Mm-hmm. She'll hit a regulation bike on the turns when she comes to her full speed.
Like him, gal? How about a name for him, sis?
Don't ask me, Pop.
Oh, why not? You've named 100.
But we're different, just horses. He makes me feel like I'd be stepping out of my class to try and name him. I should like to meet them sometime.
Any night.
Oh? Don't they appear in the daylight?
Not to such good advantage.
Say, how about it? Are you going to the dance tonight?
Yes, we're late. We have to finish this job.
Well, don't forget to wash your face.
I won't if you won't.
You mean I'm dirty?
It's good, clean dirt. What are we going to do about him?
We'll have to get a lawyer, the best in town.
But why? He didn't hurt the girl.
You and I might believe that, but they don't. Can his father afford $25,000 for bail?
Less than 6 months after she was married, the dream began to crumble.
It's true, Gail said. And that's all I have to say about it. If you want any further details, you'll have to ask Guy.
They tried to patch things up, and this started a long period of will they, won't they. Meanwhile, Gail was still having problems with the studio.
Strange that such a shy girl as Gail Russell should get into so many skirmishes with her studio bosses.
I can't really say what those so-called skirmishes were about, but in 1951, she starred in the film Air Cadet, and it would be her last film for 5 years.
You could be great at that stuff.
I could be great at the barbells, too.
No, I mean it. You got a terrific sense of timing, hasn't she, Russ? Of course, it'll take a little practice, but with me as a teacher...
You need to go no further, Mr.
Chisanacek.
Chisanacek. I'm sold on Strauss waltzes.
Well, I could do that, too.
That's what he's trying to prove about you, Russ. You see, the commanding officer of your brother's squadron was Major Jack Page.
For the next few years, people began to wonder what was going on with Gail Russell, and rumors were always flying.
And odds on bet that Gail Russell would land more and bigger roles if her temper matched her gentle appearance.
Mystery about Gail Russell's Paramount contract deepened. She's drawing weekly paychecks but hasn't been assigned to a movie role since she was taken out of the cast of a buckskin opus months ago.
No more movies for Gail Russell. Gail Russell retiring from pictures has made it official.
Guy Madison and Gail Russell are denying that their marriage has come apart at the seams.
She was set to star in a film called Loan Shark, but an illness made her drop out.
Hollywood's first big heartbreak story of 1952 is the surprise blow-up of Gail Russell's movie comeback as George Raft's co-star in Loan Shark.
Meanwhile, rumors about Gail and Guy continued in the papers. On May 29, 1953, it was reported that Gail was too ill for a divorce.
Gail Russell is finding solace in religion these days, and intimates say she's winning her fight against illness. She won't divorce Guy unless he plans to remarry and asked her for his freedom.
And Guy commented that, "I don't think she'll ever do another picture though. She never liked acting or movie making in the first place."
Gail Russell, ready for a new career try after a long session with the psychiatrist.
And then, in October of 1953, the news got even worse for Gail. John Wayne's wife, Esperanza, filed for divorce. What does this have to do with Gail? Well, she was named as the other woman. A court fight between He-Man movie star John Wayne and his estranged wife got off to a lurid start today with her charge that he spent the night with actress Gail Russell. Mrs. Wayne, 31, said her husband spent the night in the home of Miss Russell, his leading woman in a movie at the time in 1949. Wayne's wife also accused Wayne of being drunk and abusive. Both Gail and the cowboy star denied that they had ever spent the night together. Eventually, Wayne and his wife settled the divorce.
Gail Russell, wife of Guy Madison, was morally blasted, and even after her reputation was cleared, she took the disgrace too much to heart that doctors ordered her into a rest home.
But here's the thing, did she really go? Not according to this article. Now it can be told that several days after Gail Russell was named in the mudslinging John Wayne divorce action, estranged hubby Guy Madison drove her to Seattle for a sanitarium rest, with Guy paying the bills as long as necessary. But when they reached Seattle, Gail backed down, refusing to check in at the sanitarium, and Guy returned her to Hollywood. Whether or not she went to a sanitarium isn't that important. The real trouble started in November of 1953.
Guy Madison is being kind as usual to Gail Russell. He's holding off the divorce until after her drunk driving case is settled.
Gail on Wagon. Movie actress Gail Russell has been placed on 2 years probation with the condition that she refrain from intoxicants, stay away from places where liquor is sold, and obtain medical treatment. She pleaded guilty and was fined $150.
Attorneys for Guy Madison and Gail Russell will soon be huddling on the divorce blueprints. Sidelight on the recent legal order for Gail to seek psychiatric care is that Paramount once offered to foot the bills if she would check into the Menninger Clinic. Gail refused and was subsequently dropped by the studio. Soon, Gail and Guy both sued each other for divorce. Gail Russell, reported to be in a sanitarium, is very much among those present in Hollywood. Now that Guy Madison has won the interlocutory decree from her, Gail will start preparing for a movie comeback. And within days of the divorce being made official, Guy remarried.
I was drinking steadily then. I was beginning to be aware of what was happening to me. I thought that if I could quit pictures and be a housewife, I could stop drinking. Yes, I was that innocent. We were married for 5 years. Except for a couple of things, I stayed away from movies. I wanted to make a home for us and for children. I continued to paint, but I continued to drink. Alone. The worst possible way. People have asked whether alcohol broke up our marriage. Yes, of course it did. I've heard it said that a drunken man is pathetic, a drunken woman is disgusting. I can see that all right. Sure, there's always more than one factor when a marriage goes on the rocks, but by the time we were divorced, long before, in fact, I knew what I was, and so did everyone else.
Gail Russell's plight is the buzz of the film colony. She's suffering from a physical breakdown and great despondency.
On top of all that Gail was going through, she came down with a severe case of hepatitis. She was taken to the Good Samaritan Hospital where she was in a coma and near death. For 3 of the 5 months she was there, she was under treatment for hepatitis. For a while, she was even in an oxygen tent, teetering between life and death.
Lying in bed, each time I would listen, but there were always two big ifs in my mind. Can I do it? I would ask myself. And always, do I want to do it? I'd made such a mess of things. I wasn't sure I even wanted to live. Nothing seemed worth the effort anymore. The turning point was not a sudden thing, but slow and gradual over a period of months.
Tragedy shadowed, Gail Russell has been advised by medics to take a long rest away from Hollywood and to shelve the idea of a film comeback for the present. When Gail was finally released from the Good Samaritan Hospital and allowed to go home, she thought she was healthy and ready to start a comeback. But then, she rear-ended another car. Strangely, the family in the car that was rear-ended had a daughter named Gail, who apparently was named after Gail Russell. But that didn't stop them from suing Gail for $30,000. This time she entered Alcoholics Anonymous. After another stay in a sanitarium and the vow never to drink again, she decided to try her comeback. And for this, she turned to her friend, John Wayne. Wayne's production company was making a film for Randolph Scott called 7 Men From Now, and he gave Gail her comeback break. Gail Russell made it. She's completely straightened out and hasn't taken a drink in months. John Wayne tested her in color and she came out beautifully. Gail will make a picture with Randolph Scott for the Wayne Fellows Company. So don't ever tell me it can't be done. This girl did it.
It's wonderful to be back at work. I had been a vegetable, doing nothing for much too long.
And now the 31-year-old actress is looking forward to
another picture right away, and possibly some TV films. I may marry again someday, but now I want to get my career going. I'd like to get some security.
I don't think she's the great star she should have been, says Wayne, but she can be a competent actress. Some people think I'm taking a big gamble with her. Well, I don't think so. I've worked with her in 2 pictures and she's always on the set and never late. Paramount didn't know how to handle her. They broke her spirit.
My folks have me in a shack up in Lerno, ma'am. They moved to Silver the summer I was first able to walk.
And Mr. Stride, is he from Silver, too?
The sheriff, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. He was the law there for 12 years.
Was?
Yeah, they held an election back last fall. Didn't he tell you?
No.
Reckon he wouldn't at that.
Her?
Yeah, they killed her. Sheriff's wife.
Fans welcome Russell's return. Since completing her screen comeback role in 7 Men From Now, Backjack Productions from Warner Brothers, Gail Russell is becoming increasingly busy with an item that hasn't occupied her attention since she retired 4 years ago. Fan mail.
Ah, pity.
An art critic.
Pity and a shame they wouldn't put as much paint on the old tub as you've got in that paper.
Canvas.
Oh, it's a good likeness, though.
Well, thank you. I think it's a rather handsome old tub.
Are you sure we're looking at the same ship?
You know, I like the name. The Island Chief.
Mrs. Morrow?
Yes, what is it?
I'd like to speak to you. I'm Mrs. Blaine. May I come in?
Go away. Go away.
Please, I must talk
Leave me
to
alone.
you. Leave me alone.
Yes.
You wanted to send the Restons to prison, didn't you?
Yes.
You want to see me go to prison, don't you?
Yes.
You're lying now because you hate me, isn't that so?
I'm not lying.
You do hate me, don't you?
Yes, I hate you.
And your hate for me is so strong that you'd do anything to destroy me.
Yes.
She credited God for saving her career. All was finally going well.
Gail Russell, whose driver's license was suspended a few years ago, has it back now, and I'm glad to say has bought herself a new car to celebrate.
But 3 months later, this time she crashed into a restaurant and injured an employee.
I had 2 drinks. No, 4. Oh, I don't know how many I had. It's nobody's business.
She told the arresting officer after the 4 a.m. incident.
I hope, God willing, never to drink again. I am sorrier than I can possibly express about what I've done, especially about the injury to the boy. I'm terribly ashamed, but what can I say? I just want people to know that this wasn't the result of a wild, frivolous spree. I didn't plan it. I tried to avoid it, and it certainly gave no one any pleasure. But I'm not going to try and justify myself. I had been drinking. I hope, God willing, never to drink again. That's honestly all I can say.
When she didn't appear in court, sheriff deputies found her unconscious on her bathroom floor, barefoot and in pajamas. She was taken to Los Angeles General Hospital.
Gail Russell is suffering from a serious malady and is in very bad health.
Still, she signed to star in another film, Flim Flam. But on October 21st, 1957, it was reported that Gail had to drop out of the film due to a liver ailment. Gail Russell says things are looking up for her. She tells us that it's hard to express the happiness brought to her
because of all the folks who are coming out of no place to comfort me and give me courage.
In 1958, she made the film No Place to Land.
Amazing. You're pretty. I mean, you're even prettier than I thought.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, I don't know what we're going to do when the season's over and you leave. And I suppose you will.
And by the end of the year, it was reported that
Gail Russell has been forced into retirement by personal problems which have plagued her career.
And by 1959, people were starting to wonder what happened to Gail Russell. The other day I saw Gail Russell and Joe McCrea on the TV. Whatever happened to her? In 1960, she appeared in a couple of TV shows.
I don't understand.
Well, in every military engagement, my future hopes were whittled away. There was less and less remaining of the flower of Southern aristocracy. Lieutenant, you asked me here to look at a lineup. I did. I identified the man who stole my fur coat and struck me, and now you're trying to get me to change my mind.
And in 1961, she appeared in the film The Silent Call.
Do you think that we would have left Pete there if we knew this was going to happen? Now answer me, do you? Don't you lie to me, Guy.
I ain't lying.
Listen, don't you dare lie to me. You threw it on the floor, didn't you? Answer me, didn't you?
Yeah, I did it. I'll admit it. There's one thing I ain't, and that's a liar.
But that was to be her last film, because 3 months after its release, it was reported that the 36-year-old had an empty vodka bottle by her side and others scattered around the apartment. One of her neighbors said to reporters,
I know she had a sincere desire to stop drinking, but she couldn't. It's a tragic thing. She was a lovely, shy girl with her dark hair, large eyes, and husky voice.
You know, it's easy to blame Hollywood or her parents for her problems, but personally, I don't think that's fair. Some people, sadly, just can't deal with their demons, no matter how hard they try.
If you saw Ray Milland in Lost Weekend or Susan Hayward in I'll Cry Tomorrow, you have an idea of what I went through. It's hell. That's all you can say. It's hell. It's a very special, gutter kind of hell. And what made it a worse hell was the lack of privacy. When you're an alcoholic and a movie star, the whole world knows about it. The newspapers were neither kind nor unkind. It's their job to report facts. It would be easy to say that if I had never entered movies, I wouldn't have become an alcoholic, but it wouldn't be true. Sometime in my life, I would have taken a drink, and I would have been off. I'm one of those people, and my doctor has told me there are many others.